Have you ever had an account where everything looked healthy? The customer seemed happy, the sentiment was positive, the dashboard's green, and then the customer just churns? It's a painful surprise, and it's something that my guest today, Nakul Kadaba, has seen many times over the course of his career. Nakul has spent years in customer success and account management roles at companies like HubSpot and ServiceNow, working directly with customers after the initial sale to drive retention and growth. In this episode, we talk about why strong relationships and good sentiment aren't enough. Nakul argues correctly, I think, that many teams measure how customers feel, but they don't actually quantify the value that their product or their service is creating for the customer. And that's a big, big problem. What we're going to dig into today is how to actually tie your product to a customer's real business goals. We're going to talk about how to run even more consultative conversations that bring more value to your client, and how to examine a customer's business model in detail so that you can connect what you do to the outcomes that they actually care about. I hope you enjoy this episode of Account Management Secrets. If you're an account manager, you're the one keeping the business running. You own the client relationships, drive the revenue, and solve the tough problems for your customers. Most companies don't give account managers the training or recognition they deserve. That's what you'll get here on the Account Management Secrets podcast. In this show, we cover exactly what you need to succeed. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Okay, here we are. Great, awesome. Nakul, welcome. Glad to see you and glad for you to be here on Account Management Secrets.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Good to be here.
So you've had customer success, account management roles at HubSpot, well-known software companies, ServiceNow, also very well-known software companies. So you've been in the thick of enterprise deals and big IT type of stuff. And I want to start out just with understanding what is a very common scenario for a lot of customer success and account management professionals, which is, you could be looking at your records, you could be looking at an account and understanding what's going on, and you see strong customer sentiment. So you see high CSAT scores or high NPS scores, and everyone seems happy, everything is green, in your dashboard. And you can still wind up losing the renewal, which is, just such a nasty surprise when it happens to people. It's like a dagger in the heart when that happens. But tell me, when that's happening, what do you think is actually going on? I know you have some opinions and experience here. What's actually happening when we see something looking good and green and winds up not being that way in reality?
Yeah, I have pretty strong opinions, actually, about this scenario in particular. Right. The short answer is we haven't really quantified value. What we've really quantified or collected is sentiment. And sentiment is very different from customer value or client value, however you'd like to look at it. And so I'll put something like an ROI calculator, right, that a lot of companies nowadays have on their website. It's wonderful. Those are great artifacts to collect top of the funnel leads at the very, very beginning of the buyer's journey. That's not the same, and customer sentiment is not the same as quantifying value, because quantifying value is related and personalized to each customer, and quantifying value also dictates how you are going to engage your customer as they come onto your, I'll say, post-sales team. It could be a customer success team or account management.
So just to make sure I understood that.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the ROI calculators, there's many of them, we've all seen these things, they're on the websites, they're in the sales decks. Are you saying that those things don't capture the level of granularity that the customer has? Or are you saying that the issue is that we pitch that in the sales process, and then by the time it gets to post-sales, we're talking about something completely different?
Yeah, I'd say it's more the latter. And the way I'll describe it as is in the sales process, a lot of sales teams can use that, rightly so, right?
Sure.
Start actually quantifying a customer's pain and to further qualify it in a deal. The conflation occurs when a customer success team or account management team or other post-sales team says, oh, that is the same as the customer's value, meaning this is what they want to get out of using our products and services. And much like sentiment, to go back to the initial question, that's not the same thing, right?
Okay.
Customer value is a very, very explicit concept, and post-sales teams really need to align a customer's business goal and metrics with a guide on how you will be able to provide value throughout your relationship, because it's not a one and done thing. But also, just like your business that you work for as a post-sales rep, your customer's business is a very evolving, iterating organization, right? And so it's necessary to keep tabs in order to maintain the relationship, but then also find ways to also provide that value every call or meeting that you have with them.
So I feel like we've heard this sort of thing, thousands of times. Quantify value, show value, this kind of thing. Like it's literally been like bludgeoned. The teams have been bludgeoned with this statement. Let's get specific. Like, how do we do that? Give us a story. What's different? How does this actually work?
Yeah, story. Probably the best way to think about it is thinking about it like a math problem. I know for those who are not really interested in math, that they may come as a detractor. I assure you to keep listening, right? Because what it actually does is, if you don't want to think about it like a math problem, think about it like a part of a puzzle. Where the way that I used to coach my teams was, you want to use a way to categorize what your customers are telling you in the first few conversations to start uncovering what they actually care about, and then standardize it so that you can help communicate value from any position that you're in. So the way I would coach my teams is, if you have an equation of y equals x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus x sub 3, et cetera, y is your business goal. Y is the customer business goal of what do you want to be as a business when you grow up, essentially. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your products and services. If not, that's even better, because that is an honest reflection of what your customer is telling you of, this is where we want to get to eventually, right? Whether it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. X sub 1, X sub 2, X sub 3, etc., are your metrics, and they can be the metrics that your decision maker or buyer cares about, what your influencer cares about, what your various teams on the customer side care about, geographies, so on and so forth. Then what you end up needing to do is, you need to be able to understand what initiatives or projects that you can actually affect with your products and services need to be structured in terms of your engagement. So what I mean by that is saying, if you have an annual revenue, if a customer has an annual revenue target that they have to hit as their business goal, your metrics could be something like number of deals created, actual revenue generated, close rate, average days to close, for example. The initiatives basically that a CSM or an AM can think about are, okay, we need to do a sales process design and make sure your products and services are actually integrated with our solution appropriately. We need to enable your sales team. We probably need to look at the marketing sales handoff, because I'm sure there's going to be a metric in there I did not mention on marketing sales handoff. So we need to understand that. Now, all of a sudden, of those 3 initiatives that I just spit out in 2 minutes, right, with a random example, that you can basically structure all your calls and all your engagements. And more importantly, you can structure all of the self-serve materials and other materials that maybe your organization has that's related to your products and services can provide your customer, so that you are providing value to them in order to make the most out of what they have with you as a result.
Okay, so the way that I got that was, you've got a big picture goal of the customers, and even better if it's got nothing to do with your product or your service. It's got nothing to do with what you're selling. They're just telling you, here's where we want to go as a company. Here's what the big picture looks like for us. Okay, correct. Cool. And that's usually, frankly, on their websites somewhere, right?
Yeah,
or it's in the report.
Right.
And you can go ask them, and it'll have been part of the corporate communications drumbeat, and so everyone hopefully will know what that is. So we got that. So we orient around that, and then you're saying, let's break it down then into component parts. So what feeds into that? And those are those little examples. And so you might have quantitative metrics for that stuff. So if we want to go here, here's how we're going to know if we're getting there. And then underneath that, we have initiatives. And now we're starting to get in the language of what can I influence? Where can I be helpful? Where does my product fit? Is at the initiative level. And so then each initiative, we're trying to then attach that to the bigger picture, and we're trying to make sure that we have very clear goals in there. And this makes sense conceptually to me. Like, I get it, and I've talked to enough people now to understand how that all works. Where does this break down? Where does this slip up? Why isn't everybody doing this today?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I always kind of tried to understand this with the teams that I coached as well. I think what I found out is other CSMs, when I was a CSM and when I became kind of a manager of teams, I found out that a lot of CSMs or AMs tend to actually leave those conversations for the beginning and then just stop effectively.
Right.
And so
it's like a milestone. They have the big fancy goal conversation week one, and then they forget about it. Okay.
Yep. Or what ends up happening, because most of the time, customers are rarely going to hand you their business goal in the first call or in a neat way. It's not
still establishing trust.
You're still
what you want. Maybe they're in a hurry. They have a million things going on.
Yep, exactly. And depending on how your post-sales process is, right, there may have been some bumps along the way before they even got to you, right? And so what my solution is, and to further answer your question, it's because a lot of CSMs or post-sales reps are leaving it in the beginning and then saying, oh, I've got 2 of the metrics. Great. Because I know what my decision maker cares about, which is important. I can basically carry on with this. Well, you don't have the complete picture. So the way that I coach my teams is I say that discovery never ends. You have to be uncovering this every single time, even if it means that you're doing it well into, the year or annual engagement or however long your engagement is with that customer, because it requires that continual curiosity. And you actually mentioned this, Alex. Thank you for that. Of investigating the customer's website for account prep, looking at their financial statements if it's publicly available, the website messaging, understanding the team structures as you meet more people, to actually come up and tailor your questions appropriately to say, it looks like on your website you're saying this. Can I state that this is your business goal, or is it something else? It's a lot more pinpointed than saying, what's your business goal, right?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So I just want to reflect on that.
Yes.
First, I believe in the idea of relentless curiosity. It's one of the chapters in the book, The Growth Department. We have a whole chapter on relentless curiosity. Curiosity is the number one superpower for account managers. So the second point that you brought up there is really important. It's funny. Just today I was talking with a team, bunch of software CSMs, and they said, we have this issue where we're told to go find out our customers' business goals, but we walk into the meeting and we ask them, what are your goals? And the customer gets annoyed because they say, well, we just spent, 6 months with your sales team and we answered all these questions. And so what you want to do instead is you want to have done your homework and your prep. Sure. And, look, I understand that the sales to account management handoff doesn't always work. It's not always as rich and informative as you would like it to be. But you can still go out there and put in a little bit of effort to find the goals, to read the annual reports. Literally just read a press release. It'll tell you this stuff. And that way you have something to show to your customer, to share with them that they can respond to. And you're saying, hey, I think it's A, B, and C. And then they're responding to it, as opposed to you showing up. And you look less professional if you show up and just say, what are your goals? Because the client's like, we've already talked about this.
Yeah, there is a danger of being too open-ended, right? And that's where it is. Whereas, and the other part is what you just mentioned, Alex, of actually asking your sales team, however the handoff went, to say, hey, what did you collect in this handoff process? So I know. So that, okay, if they gave you a bit of the piece of the puzzle, great, lead off with that to say, this is what I've understood, customer. What else, what other information can you provide for me? Because I'm actually missing, some more X variables and the Y variable, for example. And then to round off that call, maybe that first call, you say, customer, I'm actually probably thinking we've got 3 or 4 initiatives that we probably want to be speaking about for the next 6 months. I'd love to get a cadence in right now to actually talk about this. Of these 4, what's the most important to get done right away? Now you're presenting yourself as, yes, open-ended enough to continue the relentless curiosity, which is very important, but directive enough to say, I know that we have to move in this particular direction. Where do you want to go? Right.
And when you said there was risk in being too open-ended, what did you mean?
Well, it was more in relation to your comment of if you come in and just say, hey, customer, what's your business goal? Right. There's a little bit of danger in risking the customer saying, I actually just told your sales rep this.
Yeah.
3 weeks prior. 3 weeks prior. It's not a good look. Yeah. And it starts you off in a really rough position. It does go into the homework that you need to do. Right. So even if, okay, in that situation, you don't have the business goal, you say, hey, customer, from what I've gathered from our sales team, it looks like that we only got some key projects that I understand is X, Y, Z. Can you tell me how you want to track progress on these initiatives? Okay, great. Those are your metrics. Oh, and what is this all adding up to? Okay, you're building basically iteratively based on what the customer has told you or your team. So that you're actually utilizing the resources of your company just as much as you want your customer to as well.
And, one of the other issues that happens during this critical handoff period where we're trying to quantify the goals, we're trying to really understand the goals. So very, very common is the sales process. You're trying to find your executive sponsor and the higher up people, and you do all that stuff and you get them to tell you what's going on, tell you what's on their mind, et cetera. And then as soon as the handoff happens, you drop like 3 levels in the organization to someone who's completely different, who may not have been around at the beginning. And so then if you show up and you're like, what are your goals and do this, one of the other issues and risks is they say, I don't know. Or they say, let's not talk about that. My job is to get this thing done. Let's go get this thing done. Right. And how do you then kind of pull out of that?
Yeah, it's a very common problem, especially with what you just described of going 3 levels down. A lot of CSMs, in particular, face this. One is reiterating the value that you can communicate to maybe the person that you're working with of being able to report on the progress, even if it adds up to just 1 metric. Great. That's something to actually know. But 2, in the greater value of this, no pun intended, is that you actually direct the attention back to the decision maker to say, hey, VP or EVP or whoever end up signing, I'm actually trying to figure out other pieces of the puzzle here. We've already made great progress on this. I need to make sure that your marketing manager, sales manager, whoever the person we're working with on your side is able to show progress on all the facets that your company needs to be successful with our solutions. Can you join our next call? Right? Yeah. Or can you provide some more information? Sometimes it can be provided asynchronously. It's not as ideal, right? But you are still getting that information. The ideal scenario is that you convince an EVP or your decision maker, whoever that is, to join periodic calls for something like a review of sorts, where you say, I'm going to actually show you the reporting that's in our solution that shows you the progress on the metrics and or business goal that we have. What do you think about this team? Right? And that's the best position you want to be in. You want them to consider, we're building this for you, customer. This is just a tool. You tell us whether this is still worth it or where we need to go. And that's the richest conversation I think an AM or a CSM can really get, because then they have real clarity and honesty in where they need to go.
Tell us about an experience of you and your teams doing exactly that.
Yeah. So one such customer that I had a revenue goal that they had to hit in 2 years' time. Okay. They had not given all the metrics. They had given probably like.
This was when you were at HubSpot or when you were at ServiceNow?
This is when I was at HubSpot. Yep.
Okay.
And the metrics that they gave were pretty good. it wasn't the full picture, but it was pretty good, at least for me to identify some initiatives to identify. The way in which I help to translate those products and services through to the customer goals actually unlocked a lot of new decision makers from other brands that wanted to come in and say, hey, we're actually interested in this. We'd love to actually talk to you about this.
So you're like widening the scope of the solution, widening the scope of the discussion.
Hence widening the scope of the solution. But it ended up opening opportunities to say, I see, customer, you have a stakeholder here who wants to get in from another perspective. We'd love to expand the relationship. The way I see it, you've got a couple of options. One is to upgrade. Here's what it would cost. One is to, hack it, use what you have. Here's the pros and cons to that. 3 is to do nothing, right? But in those situations, and especially with that example, I would say, please don't do nothing. I do need you to do something. And it causes the customer, really, it puts all the options in their court and say, you tell me what you want to do. I can tell you the pros and cons to each one. Even to upgrading, there are pros and cons to it, right? As it relates to your situation, right? But I can tell you what, depending on whatever you want to do, I will support you, right? And I will lead with you. The customer ended up expanding in terms, with their relationship with us. And it really reflected in how I thought about it. And then later when I led teams, how I coached my teams about it. You wanted to actually take the level of trust, and I'd say, I call it a customer first mindset, just like a lot of other companies do, but you want to apply it so that you're actually advocating for the customer and how they want to grow. This is an active example of doing that. Because in a few of those instances with that same customer, a few times they just said, we actually want to just use what we have right now. Totally fine. You could totally do that. Great. Let's do that. Because it made sense for them at the time. And a couple of other instances, they said, no, let's go with the upgrade option. Sure, we can. I will.
What did that mean for you in terms of the initial deal value versus lifetime value?
It was about 4x of the initial customer investment over about a 2.5 year period.
Okay, so so this is important, because some people listening to this conversation, Nakul, they're going to say, boy, this sounds like a lot of work. And God, I don't have time to spend so much time running around inside of each account and asking all these questions and doing all these meetings. I just need to get on with it. But what you're saying is, hey, we quadrupled an account in 2.5 years by following this discipline. Now, everybody wants to do that. 100% of our listeners want to do that part. They just aren't sure how to start putting in the work and how to basically manage their time and day, which is, I think, a fair question in this case.
It is. And the only thing I would add to what you just said, Alex, is being consistent in what you have and iterative. You need to make sure that you're not asking the same question, 3 months later when you're coming in. So your fundamentals or your foundation need to be strong, of your admin, your note taking, the knowledge that you have on the customer, being able to organize that in a data friendly way of being able to do that. Your call cadence or engagement structures need to be important in this sense. And being able to sub-segment your book, which I know a lot of AMs and CSMs care about, is something that you should think about, because it can reflect in how often you want to engage a certain sub-segment of your customers. And then also how much potential investment, in addition to the real investment, you see with customers in your book. Right. That I'm sure that's going to be like another hour-long conversation between us.
Let's dip our toe in this water here. So you said sub-segment. So when I think of segmentation, I think about the big portfolio level programs that say, who's a gold, a silver, or a bronze, and how do they get there? And we decide based on total value, or hopefully not only total value. Hopefully we're also adding things like commitment and potential and alignment in there. But I think about that as at the big company category. Now you're saying within your own book of business, you can also be now sub-segmenting and figuring out where to spend your time and energy.
Yep, correct. And this was something I really put into practice later when really managing teams. Not realizing at the time as an individual contributor several years prior that I was kind of doing this in my head already. I just never put it on paper. And so the exercise was, let's just have a 4-degree plane. The vertical axis is investment and potential value or monetary value. Your horizontal axis is the engagement. The engagement is not just with you. The engagement is with your company as a whole. And add to that, especially for a lot of companies nowadays who are thinking about usage, I put usage on that plane as well, on the horizontal axis. So as a result, you have 4 quadrants of high value, high engagement, low value, low engagement, et cetera, that you can basically plot your own customers. And the discussions I would have with my teams at HubSpot and ServiceNow is, all right, team, you have a customer in the high value, low engagement bucket. What resources do you give them other than more calls? Because we know that everybody is immediately going to say more calls. I would as an LP too. I would too. I would totally do it. You got to think a little beyond that and say, where would you put? What other resources would you put? Self-serve, dedicated resources, partner solution, whatever your company has. And credit to all the teams that I really have managed over the years. They almost always had other unique ideas that they ended up crowdsourcing from each other to say, hey, actually, this resource is a really good idea. Hey, we have this internal resource. We could actually probably provide this. Oh, there's a partner that actually could work with these customers in particular. That's great. We should think about other things that.
So I'm looking at my 2x2 matrix here, and obviously I want everybody high value, high engagement, but especially if we're strict about scoring or relative in scoring, it's not going to be like that. So you say, okay, some are going to be there, some are going to be low value, low engagement. And I guess those are the ones you just kind of think, okay, well, they are where they are. What are the biggest risks or flags when you do this exercise?
Is
it the low value, high engagement because they're taking a lot of my time? Or is it the high value, low engagement because they're not getting the value that they could?
I would look at the low value, low engagement, and I would look at the high value, low engagement buckets in particular.
Because high value, low engagement, they're probably paying a lot, they're worth a lot, they have a lot of potential. But if we can't track that back to something quantitative, then we put them up on our risk chart.
Correct. And the low engagement is the real key factor here. Again, I usually pair in usage with engagement. And I also say engagement with your whole company. So other than calls with you, are they filing support tickets? Are they talking to your sales rep? Are they engaging with your marketing assets? A lot of times in companies nowadays have a CRM where you can track all those interactions under a company. So you're able to glean pretty quickly if they're actually engaging with your brand or not. And for those that are high value,
this stuff, by the way, this stuff is table stakes.
This is table.
You got to have this. Correct. You got to know this stuff.
Correct.
You can't be guessing. It's 2026. People, you can have a single dashboard with all this stuff. Like it's your right.
And for those 2 planes in particular, I think of a couple of things. For high value, low engagement, I think it's the most mystery. They bought a ton of stuff from you, but you have no idea what they think of.
Danger zone, total danger zone.
Danger zone, right? So it structures your engagement. You need to understand why they're engaging with your company, what the mode of communication should be with the team. And if you don't have their business goal and metrics, that is the first thing you need to uncover with them in some way, right? Even if it starts off by just getting in touch with somebody from a team that's a user or power user and saying, what is the metric you care about? Build up from there. For the low value, low engagement, you have to, obviously on paper, it's the one to watch out for the most. It's essential to check whether you have this subsegment's business goal, who on the customer team is engaging with you. A lot of times on that bracket, it's somebody, as you were saying in an earlier question, right? Three levels down.
Too junior. Yeah.
Two really junior, probably really gung-ho, but pretty junior. And a lot of the work that I did in ServiceNow, where we worked with at-risk customers in particular, A lot of
Sorry, with you work with what?
a lot of the customers that I worked with at ServiceNow on my team, purely at-risk customers. When we were doing this exercise, the danger was, and I kind of prefaced it by team, let's not put everybody in the low value, low engagement immediately, right? Even though we know that's the first place where we think everybody should go. You really want to put those customers there where you say, I really don't know what they are. I really don't know, right? They have low value. I don't even know what the potential is, right? Their engagement, I don't even know if they've logged in just based on what I'm seeing. And that's where you want to at least start from there, because it builds clarity to say, okay, I need to be able to plan my week. I need to be able to plan my day. I'm going to prioritize, this bracket of customers this today, right? Or this week. And then that way you can actually chip away at a book, no matter how big or how small it is.
I mean, these days, almost everybody is drowning in a book that's far too big,
Yeah.
And but in my mind, I think about what you're saying, and I think this would work with 5 customers, maybe 10 customers. Anything over that, it's very difficult to get the level of to have enough time, frankly, to engage in this way. A lot of the stuff that you're talking about here feels to me a lot like consulting or guidance or sort of a consultative sale that I don't necessarily always attribute to places like HubSpot. Frankly, I think of HubSpot as being, more like, here's our product, here's the tool. How do you go about the process of making the customer comfortable and willing to have these more consultative conversations? Like, how do you position it? How do you warm them up? How do you get everyone agreed that, yeah, we're solving a bigger problem here than just launching the CRM or launching the support, platform or whatever?
Yep. A couple of things. Remember who you're talking to, at least on the customer side. Remember how you want to translate the products that you have or the solutions you have into their metrics, their initiatives, and our goal, and be able to pick it apart one by one based on what the customer is actually experiencing right then. So HubSpot actually ended up being a great place for this, because a lot of the CSMs there really care about customers, and they still do. And so a lot of the teams that I ended up coaching, really a lot of it was just coaching in terms of just pick one thing today with this customer. Pick one thing based on what they care about. And if it's, for example, average days to close, okay, you're working in the sales hub. Great. Average days to close, that's what you got to work on, right? And a lot of times it may just be making sure that they're actually attaining the usage that they need to attain. Great. That's totally fine. In another instance, it may be marketing automation, where they need to actually increase something that involves a possible upgrade into the next tier up. Great. Advise them on that and give them the options, just like, I was just telling you earlier, right? Of saying you can hack it and use what you have, and here's how you would do it. Here's the self-serve resources. Or you could upgrade. And if you'd like to upgrade, I can arrange a demo for you to see that. Once you simplify it into those steps, it doesn't matter if it's HubSpot, if it's another platform or another company, right, with a smaller product, then you're actually making sure that you are operationalizing the way that you're uncovering value with your customer, and then giving them continual forks in the road, is what I used to call it, where you're saying, do you want to go this way or this way? Do you want to go this way or this way? This way or this way? Based on where the customer goes. And again, we are not coming into this conversation saying, I need you to upgrade every single conversation. You tell me where you want to go. I will go where you want to go. I will provide resources as much as I can based on where you want to go. A lot of the teams that, last thing, and I'll stop. A lot of the teams that, I coached, particularly at HubSpot, a lot of it was just they wanted to keep using what they were using. Great.
Yeah, change is hard. Change is hard.
Change is hard. But more importantly, customers were really happy with what they had. Great. Make sure that your initiatives are growing with the amount of product and the types of products that you have. And in that case, it was very important to make sure that our CSMs really had enough knowledge of the product or the internal resources so they could provide it to customers to say, I understand you have this problem. Here's, I think, the resources to provide a solution that you have.
So you have this kind of umbrella term here that you call consultative value positioning, CVP. Yep. That's the name of the framework. Yep. Did we touch everything on CVP? Did we get everything there? Did we leave anything out?
Only the last part I didn't really mention. So first is that customer first mindset. Second is the business acumen. Again, that's translating the product into opportunities as appropriate. The third is, and I know you talk about this quite often, is the iterative feedback loop. How do you get, and this goes for leaders like myself and like yourself, how do you get leaders like us to continually improve our CSMs and AMs knowledge on how we can better work with our customers and internal stakeholders, subsequently improving their skills, improving their knowledge, improving their, I'd say, tactical nous and strategic alignment. So the best example I can say for this is, and how I implemented it a lot of times was, I don't ever want to see an open agenda with a customer anytime you book a call. I don't know what that means. A customer team does not know what that means. Nobody knows what that means, right?
No open agendas.
No open agendas.
Always an idea of what we're going to talk about.
Follow up about initiative Y, reporting on metrics ABC. Great. That's something, right? Because it's tangible, it's reportable, or it's measurable, and it adds to something that the customer already told you that they care about.
Got it.
And it allows for flexibility. So customers, obviously, I was saying, they're a fluid organization just like yours. So you need to be able to understand that a customer may come to you and say, hey, actually, this metric, we don't really care about it anymore. Care about this other thing. Okay, great. You can pivot in that sense, in that time. And view the calls as progress reports for each other based on where and their willingness to, one, continue working with you, two, expand with you where necessary, and then three, and the most crucial thing, renew with you. Because I think you've said it too, Alex, but recurring revenue is not a guarantee by itself.
Ooh.
It's not a guarantee.
There's no such thing as recurring revenue, and our jobs here are keep the customers, grow the ones we can, and make sure there's no surprises along the way. So, right. Nakul, let's say that someone is listening to this and they're like, all right, I'm down with the CVP, the Consultative Value Positioning Framework. I'm excited about it. This makes sense. Yeah. Where do they start?
The first thing they got to start is really understanding the customer that they have and the books that they have. So even before going to the nice exercise that we just did really quickly, being able to document actually customer goals that they have for each of their customers is going to be very important. And then keep actually going back to that every conversation they have. What other pieces in the puzzle are missing? Can I ask one or two questions today that'll help me uncover more pieces, right? Two is actually understanding the resources that you have internally to help serve the customer. A lot of times, and AMs and CSMs end up being very, very stressed out all the time because they think they have to answer every single query that a customer has. One of the first things I always tell teams that I've coached is please don't ever think that. There's a whole team of resources ready to help you, right? Just as we coach our customers to say, hey, you have the resources of this gigantic company or this medium-sized company, you too, CSMs, have the resources of this company. So for technical product questions, great, support. For product feedback, okay, bring in a product manager, if they're willing to listen to that feedback or route it internally. Expansion, okay, if sales is actually involved in that, great, bring them in or introduce them after the call. Now, all of a sudden, you're using the time and resources that you have appropriately, and you're working smart so that a customer success manager with a large book of business is not really feeling it. They're fielding the requests as it makes sense to them, and they're asking the pinpointed questions to say, again, those forks in the road. Where do you want to go, right?
Got it. Great.
That's what I say where to start.
So this is the challenge to everyone who's out there listening who says, yeah, this makes sense. The number one directive, the first thing to do is maintain the discipline of quantifying the customer's business objectives, quantify their goals, get them to tell you what they are, get your sales team to ask them during the sales process, write it all down, pressure test it, go back to the customer, confirm your assumptions, and use these as the crux of your entire engagement with them. So once you have this information, don't just file it away. It does not belong in a filing cabinet or in some random folder on Google Drive. It belongs top and center in all your conversations with the customers. So that's the main thing that we are leaving you with here today. Really appreciate this conversation. Nakul Kadaba, thank you for being here. Really like the framework you presented.
Thanks, Alex. It was good to be here. Hope this is helpful.
Thank you.